I'm the kind of 49ers fan who smells charcoal at sunrise in a parking lot. So when a client's extra Super Bowl seats, my seats, vanished, the heat in my chest felt like kickoff fireworks. Then my phone lit up. Are you shitting me? We made a plan. A flight, a conference room, fluorescents humming, stale coffee, glass cool beneath my fingertips. The partner beside me shifting, cheeks going Niners red. A woman I didn't know sits down, all casual, and the client says, "You must already know her from the Super Bowl, right?" The room thins. A heartbeat, a pen scratch, a swallowed lie. I steady my voice, eyes on the field in my head, and wait for the snap. The week the NFL playoffs came roaring back, I felt that familiar electricity in my chest, the kind that smells like charcoal briquettes at dawn and sounds like hundreds of voices chanting in a parking lot. I'm that 49ers fan, the one who tailgates all day, paints his face red and gold, and high-fives strangers like we're cousins. A few years ago, when we finally made it back to the Super Bowl, I could practically taste the victory nachos before kickoff. At the time, I was working at a consulting firm, juggling a handful of accounts I handled directly. I took pride in it, the emails at midnight, the plane rides, the tight agendas that still somehow made room for messy reality. There was one client in particular who had become more than a client. He became a friend. He knew I bled red and gold. After meetings, we'd grab a drink or dinner and talk shop, sure, but we'd also talk football, deep, nerdy, passionate football. He laughed at how superstitious I got during the season, how I wore the same hoodie on winning streaks. He had access to a pair of extra company seats for the Super Bowl, and, as a thank you for how hard I'd gone for his account, he wanted to give them to me. A surprise. He passed the tickets to the partner on our account, the senior guy I'll call Dickhead Partner, to get them to me. A quiet gesture, a gift meant to land in my lap like a perfect spiral. I can still feel the way I floated through that week thinking everything was lining up. The game came and went. We lost. It sucked in that special, hollow way that only a big game loss can suck. I remember sitting on my couch, my living room a graveyard of red cups and crumpled napkins, trying to convince myself we'd be back soon. A week later, after a meeting with that client, we went out for drinks. It was one of those nice places where the bartenders stir with long spoons and the ice cubes clink like glass marbles. We were leaning against the bar when he gave me this curious look and asked, "Hey, why didn't you go to the game? I heard someone else was in your seats." The words didn't make sense at first, like he'd switched languages mid-sentence. I laughed a little and said, "What game?" He leaned in and said, "The Super Bowl." I blinked. The Super Bowl? I felt the air get sucked out of the room. "I didn't have seats to the Super Bowl," I said, my voice coming out smaller than I wanted. He frowned. He explained that he'd given a pair of his company tickets to my partner, Dickhead Partner, to pass along to me. He looked genuinely shocked. "Ask around quietly," he said, tapping the bar. "Get back to me." I nodded, my stomach dropping. My mind was already running way ahead of me, connecting dots I hoped weren't real. But I had no idea what was coming next. When I got back to the office the following week, I kept it subtle. I didn't storm around or make a scene. I chatted with one of the secretaries, the kind person who always knows the full story before anyone else realizes there is a story. It's one of the secretaries, the kind person who always knows the full story before anyone else realizes there is a story. She lowered her voice and told me that Dickhead Partner had given a pair of Super Bowl tickets to another one of his clients as a gift from our company. I swear the floor tilted. These weren't just any seats. They were on the 30-yard line for the 49ers in the Super Bowl. I could feel the heat rising to my face. Anger, disbelief, humiliation all packed together. Under different circumstances, I might have swallowed it to keep the peace. But this was theft dressed as generosity. I thought about confronting him. I pictured stepping into his office, closing the door, and watching him squirm. But I realized something important. The client was the one who noticed I wasn't there. If I let him handle it, there'd be no blowback on me. My hands would stay clean while the truth did the dirty work. So I sent my client a text. "Hey, I just wanted to thank you for thinking of me with those seats. It appears they were given to another one of our firm's clients." I barely had time to put my phone down before he replied in all caps, "Are you shitting me?" Then another, pretend I never told you. Let me handle. My chest eased. He followed up with me about a plan, quietly, carefully. I could almost hear the gears turning on his end. In a few days, we were invited to a meeting at his office. He specifically requested the partner be present. Not unusual, at least on the surface, but I knew it was the opening move. The flight down felt strangely calm. The cabin hummed the way planes always do, and I watched clouds pass like slow-motion confetti. Beside me, dickhead partner made small talk about margins and projections, his voice oily smooth, and all I could think was, you have no idea what's waiting for you. We arrived at their office, glass walls, modern chairs, that faint new carpet smell. In the conference room, the usual faces were already seated, along with one woman I didn't recognize. She looked mid-30s, tidy blazer, sharp eyes. She smiled at us with polite interest. My client stood and played host with theatrical ease. Dickhead partner, this is Stephanie Suchansuch, VP from our other department. She wanted to sit in. He turned to me and added, hey, you guys must already know her from the Super Bowl. Stephanie reached out to shake my hand, her expression confusion mixed with warmth. Oh, I don't think so. Did we meet there? She said gently. I'm sorry if I forgot. My client chuckled. Geez, Steph, how much did you have to drink? They were sitting right next to you. He winked, not at me, but in this theatrical, knowing way. All eyes landed on me. I swallowed, feeling the room tilt toward me like a stage. I looked at my client and said, sorry, I wasn't there. Are you thinking of someone else? Out of the corner of my eye, I saw the color drain from dead partner's face. He shifted in his chair, then cleared his throat. He started, his smile cracking. Stephanie leaned in, cutting him off, her tone perfectly casual. No, I'm pretty sure it wasn't him in those seats. It was so-and-so from other company. She paused. By the way, why did we give company seats to those guys? Are we doing a project with them I don't know about? The room went quiet. It was the kind of quiet that prickles your skin. Their company and that other company had absolutely nothing to do with each other. It would have made about as much sense as Coca-Cola partnering with John Deere. The trap was sprung. Dickhead partner said again, a small sound trying to stand in for a reason. My client leaned back, steepling his fingers, all pretense of casual gone. Small sound trying to stand in for a reason. My client leaned back, steepling his fingers, all pretense of casual gone. He looked directly at him and said, Dickhead partner, I gave you those tickets for me, right? The sound of my own heartbeat suddenly felt like a drumline against my ribs. A hot, bright red crept up from the partner's collar. He looked from me to the client and back, and then he tried to throw a lifeline in my direction. Oh, well, he wasn't able to make it. He said, nodding at me like we were teammates. So he must have given the seats to someone else. I held his eyes. What are you talking about? Wait, client, you gave me tickets to the Super Bowl? My voice came out steady, even innocent, and I could feel the smallest flicker of satisfaction as it landed. My client's expression hardened. He raised his voice, just enough to carry weight. Those tickets were a personal thank you gift from me to him. Did you give them away to someone else? He let the question hang, then added, after a beat that felt like an hour, was it another client? You could hear the fluorescent lights buzzing. The partner pivoted, fishing for anything that didn't sound like, yes, I stole your generosity and repurposed it to curry favor elsewhere. Oh, maybe something got mixed up in the office? Silence dropped over us like a heavy coat. My client looked down, unhurried, collected his portfolio and iPad, and slid them into his briefcase. When he finally stood, the scrape of his chair felt like a gavel. I think this meeting is over, he said evenly. Then he turned to me. I owe you a thank you gift. Let's go to lunch. Stephanie, you're welcome to join. He shifted his gaze to the partner. Dickhead partner, I need to evaluate our relationship. Please go back home and expect to hear from us next week. The partner stammered something about joining us to talk things through. Damage control. But Stephanie shook her head, polite and firm. I don't think that's a good idea, she said, and asked the front desk to escort him out. We all watched the glass doors close behind him and listened for the elevator chime. As soon as we heard the elevator doors click shut, the room exploded with laughter. I felt this insane mixture of relief and adrenaline and vindication wash over me. Stephanie wasn't really a VP, just an employee drafted into the little theater production. But she was fantastic, and as it turned out, a huge Niners fan to boot. We headed out for lunch together, still cracking up over the look on his face. The restaurant my client chose was one of those places where the menus don't have prices, and the waiters make recommendations like they're reading poetry. He made a show of ordering the good stuff, the wine, the steak, the desserts, like he was setting a new high score. Halfway through a perfectly cooked steak, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Dickhead Partner. "We need you to cover for the firm. We'll discuss when you get back." The desperation bled through the screen. I showed it to my client. He smirked and said, "Wait a couple of hours and then respond." He laid out the plan like a coach drawing up the game-winning drive. First, he wanted to send invoices to our firm for the resale value of the Super Bowl tickets. Resale, not face value. The number was over $10,000. Second, he wanted the bill for lunch covered. He'd made sure it would sting. Third, he expected a direct apology to me. Fourth, he wanted a written apology addressed to his company for what he would be labeling theft. And finally, he would only interact with me or another partner going forward, never with Dickhead Partner again. I nodded along, the satisfaction settling into something calmer, steadier. In forward, never with Dickhead Partner again. I nodded along, the satisfaction settling into something calmer, steadier. I waited the requested couple of hours, then typed exactly what he'd told me, word for word. I hit send and leaned back, listening to the clatter of plates and the low murmur of a dining room, oblivious to the small justice unfolding in a corner booth. Back at the firm, the fallout came fast. The other partners were furious, not at me, but at him. I looked like the person who had tried to save the relationship despite being wronged. The client transferred to another partner. That meant Dickhead Partner lost his profit share on any of their work. The partners made him pay back the invoices out of his salary. Every cent of that resale value and our luxurious lunch came out of his pocket. I remember walking past his office a week later and seeing him staring at his monitor like it owed him an apology. And still, I couldn't stop asking myself, what was he thinking? Did he really believe the client wouldn't notice that I never thanked him? That I wouldn't mention it? That it wouldn't ever come up over a casual drink? The damage was done, though. The well was poisoned for me after that. Even if I'd come out ahead politically, I didn't want to spend my days watching my back and waiting for the next small betrayal. A few months later, I left the firm for a better position, better culture, better people, better sleep. About a year after I left, the client ended the relationship with my old firm entirely. Funny enough, he now works with a good friend of mine at a competing firm. We still text about the Niners and that House of Cards meeting like it was a heist movie we pulled off together. I'm still pissed I missed the Super Bowl, even though we lost. There's something about being there in person, feeling the roar, seeing the confetti, win or lose, that stays with you. I still think about those 30-yard line seats I never sat in, the way the field must have looked from there. But the story isn't all bitterness. It's also about how people show you who they are when it matters, about decency and pettiness, and a small slice of justice served in a glass-walled conference room with a fake VP and a very real ending. And of course, it's about my team. We're back in the hunt. The jerseys are already pulled from the closet, the superstition hoodie washed and ready. I'm hoping we make it back so I can finally stand in that stadium, heart pounding, and watch the Niners under the lights. Because if there's one thing I know, it's this. There's always another kickoff, another chance, another story that ends with a win. Go Niners. But I had no idea what was coming next. The next time the stakes got this high, the playbook would get even wilder. I went from dreaming about the 30-yard line to finding out I'd been benched by someone who wore the same company colors, and that sting lingered longer than the loss. Sitting in that staged meeting felt like watching a replay from every angle until the truth finally filled the room. I left the firm with a better job and a clearer view of who shows up when it matters, even if I still missed the game I'd been waiting for my whole life.